Bienvenidos a esta transmisión en vivo de Diario Digital, Noticias, donde estamos a la espera de una transmisión en vivo desde la Casa Blanca, donde el presidente Donald Trump está a punto de dar unos comentarios sobre estas elecciones que ya llevan su segundo día de conteo desde que se realizó las elecciones el pasado martes. Y ha sido un evento polémico en todo el sentido de la palabra. Se esperan aún los resultados en múltiples estados de la Unión Americana, entre ellas Nevada, Arizona, Pensilvania, Carolina del Norte y en Georgia, donde los márgenes de ventaja para Trump están reduciéndose más y más. Estamos viendo que Trump está realizando varias demandas a lo largo y ancho del país para parar el voto y obviamente ya ha habido varios jueces que han derogado esta petición. Y el presidente pues luchando en estos momentos para mantener su presidencia, pero la ventaja cada vez más apunta a que Biden se convertirá en el presidente número 46. En Nevada y en Arizona los conteos están siendo formalizados.
We will continue the pressure on them too. Thank you very much.
Election law experts say the time to make this kind of legal claim is before the votes are counted. That's because once ballots are separated from their envelopes,
Intentando parar el voto. Se acaban de sintonizar. Estamos a la espera de una transmisión en vivo desde la Casa Blanca por el presidente Trump. Estas elecciones han sido una de las más polémicas, mayor votadas en la historia del país. En contraste con el 2016, año en que ganó Donald Trump la presidencia, los márgenes se presentaron mucho más a su favor que en estas elecciones. Y en Pensilvania, hasta esta hora, se continúan contando cientos de miles de votos que fueron procesados antes del día de las elecciones como boletas de ausencia. Debido a la pandemia del coronavirus, ha habido muchos americanos que han salido a votar de manera
largely Democrat. They are also where most of the uncounted votes remain. Turnout was huge in Bucks County, 80 to 90%.
Estamos esperando los resultados de Pensilvania, Arizona, Nevada, donde Biden ha mantenido una ligera ventaja, pero los votos son demasiado estrechos para poder declarar un ganador en esta contienda electoral 2020. Si acaban de sintonizar, estamos esperando las imágenes de la Casa Blanca, donde el presidente Donald Trump está programado en dar comentarios sobre el estado de las elecciones. Hasta el momento se ha presentado en objeción a las elecciones, queriendo parar el proceso democrático, queriendo detener el conteo de los votos en múltiples estados. Hasta el momento varios jueces se han tenido que pronunciar al respecto en contra del presidente y su petición de recontar votos o detener el voto, particularmente en Pensilvania, en Michigan, en Wisconsin, donde los números del voto han sido muy estrechos, con márgenes muy pequeños, a veces con solo miles de diferencia entre los rivales políticos. Las elecciones del 2020 pasarán a la historia como una de las más polémicas y reñidas de la historia del país y muestran las fuertes y profundas divisiones en las que se encuentra Estados Unidos en este momento sobre las ideologías y lo que define ser Estados Unidos. Por un lado, la contienda republicana, la campaña republicana, ha ignorado grandemente la pandemia, poniendo énfasis en la economía, mientras que el lado demócrata se ha aseverado de que el proceso democrático debe cambiar para poder eliminar la pandemia en Estados Unidos, reducir el número de contagios y salvar vidas para poder regresar a una normalidad. Pero esas diferencias no parecen ser las únicas. Varios canales de noticias se encuentran reportando de que Biden ha incrementado su margen en Nevada y el conteo en Arizona se ha estrechado aún más. Estamos pendientes de una rueda de prensa en vivo desde la Casa Blanca, esperando información que pudiera dar el presidente sobre estas elecciones. Hasta el momento se ha mantenido en contra del proceso, intentando derrogar el conteo, intentando parar el conteo de el voto. Ya estamos recibiendo imágenes de la Casa Blanca, desde la Sala de Prensa de la Casa Blanca. Y el presidente deberá aparecer en breves momentos para dirigirse a la nación y hablar sobre estas elecciones.
Good evening. I'd like to provide the American people with an update on our efforts to protect the integrity of our very important 2020 election. If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly, but a lot of votes came in late. I've already decisively won many critical states, including massive victories in Florida, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio. To name just a few, we won these and many other victories despite historic election interference from big media, big money, and big tech. As everybody saw, we won by historic numbers. And the pollsters got it knowingly wrong. They got it knowingly wrong. We had polls that were so ridiculous, and everybody knew it at the time. There was no blue wave that they predicted. They thought there was going to be a big blue wave. That was false. It was done for suppression reasons. But instead, there was a big red wave. And it's been properly acknowledged, actually, by the media. They were, I think, very impressed. But that was after the fact. That doesn't do us any good. We kept the Senate despite having twice as many seats to defend as Democrats. And in a really much more competitive states, we did a fantastic job with the Senate. I think we're very proud of what's happened there. We had many more seats to defend. They spent almost $200 million on Senate races in South Carolina and Kentucky alone, 2 races, and hundreds of millions of dollars overall against us. At the national level, our opponents' major donors were Wall Street bankers and special interests. Our major donors were police officers, farmers, everyday citizens. Yet for the first time ever, we lost 0 races in the House. I was talking to Kevin McCarthy today. He said he couldn't believe it. 0 races. Very unusual thing, 0. And actually won many new seats with, I think, many more on the way. This was also the year of the Republican woman. More Republican women were elected to Congress than ever before. That's a great achievement. I won the largest share of non-white voters of any Republican in 60 years, including historic numbers of Latino, African American, Asian American, and Native American voters, the largest ever in our history. We grew our party by 4 million voters, the greatest turnout in Republican Party history. Democrats are the party of the big donors, the big media, the big tech, it seems, and Republicans have become the party of the American worker, and that's what's happened. And we're also, I believe, the party of inclusion. As everyone now recognizes, media polling was election interference in the truest sense of that word by powerful special interests. These really phony polls, I have to call them phony polls, fake polls, were designed to keep our voters at home, create the illusion of momentum for Mr. Biden, and diminish Republicans' ability to raise funds. They were what's called suppression polls. Everyone knows that now. And it's never been used to the extent that it's been used on this last election. To highlight just a few examples, the day before election, Quinnipiac, which was wrong on every occasion that I know of, had Joe Biden up by 5 points in Florida, and they were off by 8.4 points, and I won Florida easily. So they had me losing Florida by a lot, and I ended up winning Florida by a lot. Other than that, they were very accurate. They had him up 4 points in Ohio, and they were off by 12.2 points. And I also won Ohio, great state of Ohio, very easily. The Washington Post had Biden up 17 points in Wisconsin, and it was basically even. They were off by about 17 points. And they knew that. They're not stupid people. They knew that. Suppression. There are now only a few states yet to be decided in the presidential race. The voting apparatus of those states are run in all cases by Democrats. We were winning in all the key locations by a lot, actually. And then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secret, and they wouldn't allow legally permissible observers. We went to court in a couple of instances, and we were able to get the observers put in, and when the observers got there, they wanted them 60, 70 feet away, 80 feet, 100 feet away, or outside the building to observe people inside the building. And we won a case, a big case, and we have others happening. There are lots of litigation, even beyond our litigation. There's tremendous amount of litigation generally because of how unfair this process was. And I predicted that. I've been talking about mail-in voting for a long time. It's really destroyed our system. It's a corrupt system, and it makes people corrupt even if they aren't by nature, but they become corrupt. It's too easy. They want to find out how many the votes they need, and then they seem to be able to find them. They wait, and then they find them. And you see that on election night. We were ahead in vote in North Carolina by a lot, tremendous number of votes. And we're still ahead by a lot, but not as many, because they're finding ballots all of a sudden. Oh, we have some mail-in ballots. It's amazing how those mail-in ballots are so one-sided, too. I know that it's supposed to be to the advantage of the Democrats, but in all cases, they're so one-sided. We were up by nearly 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania. I won Pennsylvania by a lot, and that gets whittled down to, I think they said now we're up by 90,000 votes, and they'll keep coming and coming and coming. They find them all over, and they don't want us to have any observers, although we won a court case. The judge said you have to have observers. Likewise in Georgia, and they're appealing. Actually, they're appealing. We won a case that we want people to watch, and we want observers, and they're actually appealing, which is sort of interesting. I wonder why they'd appeal, that all we want to do is have people watch as they do the vote tabulations. Likewise in Georgia, I won by a lot, with a lead of over getting close to 300,000 votes on election night in Georgia. And by the way, got whittled down, and now it's getting to be to a point where I'll go from winning by a lot to perhaps being even down a little bit. In Georgia, a pipe burst in a faraway location, totally unrelated to the location of what was happening, and they stopped counting for 4 hours, and a lot of things happened. The election apparatus in Georgia is run by Democrats. We also had margins of 300,000 in Michigan. We're way up in Michigan, won the state. And in Wisconsin, we did likewise fantastically well. And that got whittled down. In every case, they got whittled down. Today, we're on track to win Arizona. We only need to carry, I guess, 55% of the remaining vote, 55% margins. And that's a margin that we've significantly exceeded. So we'll see what happens with that. But we're on track to do okay in Arizona. Our goal is to defend the integrity of the election. We'll not allow the corruption to steal such an important election, or any election for that matter. And we can't allow anybody to silence our voters and manufacture results. I've been doing a lot of public things for a long time. I've never had anything that's been as inspirational, by people calling, talking, sending things to us. I've never seen such love and such affection and such spirit as I've seen for this. People know what's happening, and they see what's happening, and it's before their eyes. And there are many instances which will be reported very shortly. There's tremendous litigation going on, and this is a case where they're trying to steal an election. They're trying to rig an election, and we can't let that happen. Detroit and Philadelphia, known as two of the most corrupt political places anywhere in our country, easily cannot be responsible for engineering the outcome of a presidential race, a very important presidential race. In Pennsylvania, Democrats have gone to the state Supreme Court to try and ban our election observers, and very strongly. Now, we won the case, but they're going forward. They don't want anybody in there. They don't want anybody watching them as they count the ballots. And I can't imagine why. There's absolutely no legitimate reason why they would not want to have people watching this process, because if it's straight, they should be proud of it. Instead, they're trying, obviously, to commit fraud. There's no question about that. In Philadelphia, observers have been kept far away, very far away, so far that people are using binoculars to try and see, and there's been tremendous problems caused. They put paper on all of the windows so you can't see in, and the people that are banned are very unhappy and become somewhat violent. The 11th Circuit ruled that in Georgia the votes have been in by Election Day, that they should be in by Election Day, and they weren't. Votes are coming in after Election Day. And they had a ruling already that you have to have the votes in by Election Day. To the best of my knowledge, votes should be in by Election Day. And they didn't do that. Democrat officials never believed they could win this election honestly. I really believe that. That's why they did the mail-in ballots, where there's tremendous corruption and fraud going on. That's why they mailed out tens of millions of unsolicited ballots without any verification measures whatsoever. And I've told everybody that these things would happen because I've seen it happen. I watched a lot of different elections before they decided to go with this big, massive election with tens of millions of ballots going out to everybody, in many cases totally unsolicited. This was unprecedented in American history. This was by design, despite years of claiming to care about the election security. They refused to include any requirement to verify signatures, identities, or even determine whether they're eligible or ineligible to vote. People are walking in there. They have no idea. They're just taking numbers. They're writing down things, the workers, and doing a lot of bad things. And we have a lot of information coming and litigation that you'll see that will shake even you people up. And you've seen it all. The officials overseeing the counting in Pennsylvania and other key states are all part of a corrupt Democrat machine that you've written about, and for a long time you've been writing about the corrupt Democrat machine. I went to school there, and I know a lot about it. It hasn't changed. It's a long time ago, and hasn't changed. It's gotten worse. In Pennsylvania, partisan Democrats have allowed ballots in the state to be received 3 days after the election, and we think much more than that. And they're counting those without even postmarks or any identification whatsoever. So you don't have postmarks, you don't have identification. There have been a number of disturbing irregularities across the nation. Our campaign has been denied access to observe any counting in Detroit. Detroit is another place, and I wouldn't say it has the best reputation for election integrity. Poll workers in Michigan were duplicating ballots. But when our observers attempted to challenge the activity, those poll workers jumped in front of the volunteers to block their view so that they couldn't see what they were doing. And it became a little bit dangerous. One major hub for counting ballots in Detroit covered up the windows again with large pieces of cardboard. And so they wanted to protect and block the counting area. They didn't want anybody seeing the counting, even though these were observers who were legal observers that were supposed to be there. In Detroit, there were hours of unexplained delay in delivering many of the votes for counting. The final batch did not arrive until 4 in the morning, and even though the polls closed at 8 o'clock. So they brought it in, and the batches came in, and nobody knew where they came from. We've also been denied access to observe in critical places in Georgia. In multiple swing states, counting was halted for hours and hours on election night, with results withheld from major Democrat-run locations only to appear later. And they suddenly appeared, and they all had the name Biden on them, or just about all. I think almost all. They all had the name Biden on them, which is a little strange. I challenge Joe and every Democrat to clarify that they only want legal votes, because they talk about votes, and I think they should use the word legal votes. We want every legal vote counted, and I want every legal vote counted. We want openness and transparency, no secret count rooms, no mystery ballots, no illegal votes being cast after Election Day. You have Election Day, and the laws are very strong on that. You have an Election Day, and they don't want votes cast after Election Day, and they want the process to be an honest one. It's so important. We want an honest election, and we want an honest count, and we want honest people working back there because it's a very important job. So that's the way this country is going to win. That's the way the United States will win, and we think we will win the election very easily. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land. We'll see. But we think there'll be a lot of litigation because we can't have an election stolen like this. And I tell you, I have been talking about this for many months with all of you, and I've said very strongly that mail-in ballots are going to end up being a disaster. Small elections were a disaster. Small, very easy-to-handle elections were disastrous. This is a large-scale version, and it's getting worse and worse every day. We're hearing stories that are horror stories, absolute horror stories, and we can't let that happen to the United States of America. It's not a question of who wins, Republican, Democrat, Joe, myself. We can't let that happen to our country. We can't be disgraced by having something like this happen. So it will be hopefully cleared up, maybe soon, I hope soon, but it'll probably go through a process, a legal process. And as you know, I've claimed certain states, and he's claiming states, and we can both claim the states, but ultimately I have a feeling judges are going to have to rule. But there's been a lot of shenanigans, and we can't stand for that in our country. Thank you very much.
Are you being a sore loser?
Ahí han escuchado al presidente acusar literalmente al Partido Demócrata de hacer trampa en las elecciones. Un discurso de poco más de 15 minutos en que el presidente dijo repetidamente que el Partido Demócrata liderado por Biden estaba queriendo hacer trampa en estas elecciones y causando fraude electoral. Es un reto sin precedentes de un presidente hacer tales acusaciones ante un rival político desde la Casa Blanca en un proceso electoral en que se está riñendo cada voto del país. Los colegios electorales y los lugares del voto en todo el país han tomado el trabajo y la labor de contar cada uno de los votos de manera correcta, bajo los auspicios de la ley, y el presidente acaba de salir esta noche en la Casa Blanca y acusar a su rival político de fraude electoral, mostrando un tipo de desesperación que tiene Trump en querer mantener el poder y mantener su plaza en la Casa Blanca. Tendremos que estar pendientes más y más de este proceso. El presidente ha dicho que va a litigar esto en las Cortes y que lo va a pelear en las Cortes, lo cual pudiera alargar el proceso de elección durante más tiempo, especialmente si se detiene el voto o si se cancelan porciones de los votos del pueblo estadounidense. Les traeremos más información sobre esta continuada saga de las elecciones 2020. Gracias por su sintonía aquí a Diario Digital stl.com. Podrán encontrar estas y otras noticias en diariodigitalstl.com en español. Gracias.